Winter had iced the cedar forest into a cathedral of needles. The old monk walked by sound, cane tapping frost, prayer beads ticking like a small clock. Near the ravine, the night sighed, a rent in the wind, and something vast breathed back. He paused. Beneath a snow-laden pine, horns rose from a lump of darkness, and the darkness bled. He could not see the creature, only its temperature, the heat of fever through the cold, the shiver of pain in the snow's hush. He knelt. The air tasted of iron and rain that never fell. A voice rasped from the dark, half animal, half child. Not a growl, a word. Help. The forest tightened like a fist around the syllable. His hands found flesh like stone left in fire. He tore his robe into strips and bound the gashes where night had chewed. Salted breath steamed between them. He murmured the Heart Sutra, each syllable a lantern in fog. The wind tried to snuff them out. The lanterns refused, and the shadows took a step backward. "Why touch me?" asked the shape, with teeth in its tone. Monks feared demons. The old man smiled without showing it. "Suffering is a door. I keep keys." He pressed his palm to a wound. Heat struck him like a gong. Under his skin, an old brand woke. Lines he had never noticed, spirals answering spirals in the creature's blood. The horns were antlers now, and then not antlers at all, but branches of dusk. The eyes opened, and in them constellations crawled like schools of silver fish. The mountain held its breath. Somewhere, a bell rang with no temple to swing it. The name arrived on the wind, older than weather. Not demon, but a lost god. And the snow remembered how to melt. The moon leaned closer.
The lost gods are not dead. They are forgotten, sleeping beneath our stories, waiting for a voice to wake them. Here, their whispers become echoes once more. If this tale stirred something inside you, subscribe to Reimagined Orient. Every day, we unearth another myth buried in the silence of the East. Stories of gods, ghosts, and hearts that refuse to fade. Leave a like to keep the lanterns burning and tell us in the comments, from which city do you listen to the wind tonight? The temple doors are open. Let us step inside together. Chapter 1. The Scent of Iron and Prayer. The monk's name was Ryosen, though few remembered it. In the mountain monastery, they called him the Listener, for his ears heard what eyes could not see. He had lost his sight to a fever decades ago, but the world had only become clearer. Sound, scent, warmth, these were his scriptures now. The crack of ice beneath his sandals, the prayer wheel humming in his palm, the faint hiss of snow melting on breath. That night, the wind carried something wrong. It was not the chill that bit him, it was the silence that followed it. Silence thick enough to suffocate. Even the cicadas had fled their bodies. Ryosen followed the absence, cane tracing the edge of the ravine until his foot sank into something softer than snow. It was blood, still warm, still speaking. He knelt and pressed his palm to the earth. The soil trembled, whispering in its slow mineral voice. Beneath the frozen ground, a heart still beat, vast and furious. When he brushed aside the frost, his hand touched a shape too large to belong to any man. Horn, hide, and breath that reeked of thunder and centuries. "Who suffers here?" Ryosen murmured, though he already knew the answer. Something ancient, something punished. The creature's voice was a ruin, each word dragging gravel through air. "Leave. My name brings storms." The monk smiled faintly. Storms cleanse. He tore a strip from his robe and began to bind what he could not see. The cloth darkened instantly. "You bleed too much for a ghost." "I am not a ghost," the voice growled. "I am the curse." "Then we share a temple," Ryosen whispered. "I live among curses." The night grew restless. Trees shifted like sentinels changing guard. The moon dipped behind clouds, unwilling to watch. As Ryosen worked, he felt the creature's body shudder, not in rage, but in surrender. Something vast and sorrowful sighed through the cold. "You cannot heal me, monk," the voice said, softer now. "My blood has devoured gods." "Then let it devour my silence instead," Ryosen answered, fingers tracing the wound's edge like calligraphy. For a long time, neither spoke. Snow gathered over them like ash over relics. Somewhere in the valley below, temple bells rang for the midnight hour. The sound reached them hollow, distorted, as if crossing centuries. The monk closed his eyes, though they were already closed forever, and listened to the world breathing again. And beneath his touch, the heartbeat steadied. Chapter 2: The Wound That Spoke. When dawn came, it did not dare touch the forest. The sky was a lid of stone, and light crawled beneath it, like an injured animal. Ryosen remained beside the creature, fingers cold and stiff, robe soaked through with the night's breath. He felt the air tremble as the beast stirred. Its pulse beat against the ground like thunder with nowhere to go. "Still here," the voice rasped. "I thought monks were morning birds. You should have flown by now." "Even birds rest where storms fall," Ryosen replied. He tore another strip of cloth, guided by the rhythm of the creature's breathing. His hands found muscle like carved iron and veins that hummed faintly, as if carrying music instead of blood. "Your wound burns like fire in a temple brazier." "It should. My wound is not mortal." The creature's tone was quieter now, almost weary. "It was made by a god's betrayal." Ryosen tilted his head. "Then your blood remembers the divine." A pause, then laughter, deep and cracked, like old drums in a cavern. "You speak as if you have seen gods, monk." "I hear them," Ryosen said simply. "Every creature that suffers calls their name. Some whisper, some scream. You—" His hand brushed another cut, hotter than fever. "You sing." The creature shuddered, the sound half a growl, half a sigh. Snow fell between them, melting before it touched the ground. "You should fear me, human. When the seal breaks, I am ruin. I was chained beneath this mountain before your temples were dust." Ryosen dipped his fingers into the creature's blood. It hissed, gold beneath the red, pulsing faintly like a lantern flame. "Ruin bleeds too," he murmured, "and bleeding things can be healed." He began to chant, not loudly, not with demand, but with the softness of river water over stone. Each word shimmered in the cold, threads of sound weaving through mist and bone. The creature's breath deepened. The forest exhaled with it. Then the ground quaked. From beneath the snow, black roots burst upward, coiling around the monk's knees, the creature's limbs. They pulsed with light, ancient and violent. A seal was breaking, not with thunder, but with the slow inevitability of dawn. The beast convulsed. Its voice tore through the stillness, shaking frost from the branches. "You do not understand what you free." Ryosen did not move. "Freedom and mercy share the same gate," he whispered. "We can only choose which side we stand on." The roots burned away, turning to ash that spiraled into the air like incense smoke. When it cleared, the creature's form had changed. No longer horned and monstrous, it was a man's shape. Tall, scarred, crowned by faint embers of light where horns had been. His eyes opened, gold like sunrise through amber. He looked at the monk, and for the first time, something like gratitude flickered in his face. "You touched me without fear," he said. "Do you know my name?" "No," Ryosen answered. "Names are for those who need to be remembered." "Then listen well," said the being. The wind stilled as he spoke. "I was once called Koryu, the dragon of the dawn. The east was my breath, the rivers my veins. When men forgot, I fell. When they prayed to silence, I slept." Ryosen bowed his head. "And now you wake in chains of your own legend." Koryu's gaze fell upon the monk's hands, scarred, trembling, still steady. "You freed me, blind one. That means you are part of my binding now." The monk smiled faintly. Then may our prison be wide enough for the both of us. The wind returned, carrying the scent of rain. Somewhere beyond the mist, a bell rang again. Closer this time, as if the mountain itself had begun to remember its God. Chapter 3. The price of unbinding. The forest changed its breathing. Birds returned in cautious stitches of song as if repairing a torn sky. Ryosen rose with effort, palms raw, robe stiff with the creature's blood and his own sweat. The man who had been a beast stood among the cedars, unsteady, bare-chested, light leaking from his skin like dawn seen through rice paper. "You are not healed," Ryosen said, feeling the tremor in the earth where the god's weight fell. "You are only unhidden." Koryu looked toward the valley. Though mist refused to part, he seemed to see through it. "Rivers have shortened like breath held too long," he murmured. "Shrines gnaw on their own altars, and men drink silence and call it piety." He touched his ribs, where the seal had eaten into him. His fingers came away ash-gray. "The wound stays until the debt is paid." "What debt?" Ryosen asked. "Memory," Koryu said. "When they chained me, they fed my name to oblivion. To unbind me is to pull a thread from that night, someone's thread. It must break or be woven elsewhere." He turned to the monk. "Names live in flesh. The mountain will take one." Ryosen's smile was slight and wry. "The mountain has taken much already." He tapped his cane on the frozen root, listening for argument. The root stayed quiet. They traveled downslope to a stream that had forgotten how to sing. Its bed lay cracked between stones, water shivering in hollows like eyes that would not close. Koryu knelt and breathed. The puddles brightened, trembled, and slid together, a vein remembering its duty. "When I slept," he said, "time stacked dust on time. Those who guarded the seal died and were replaced by men who only guarded the story of guarding. And stories—" He dipped a finger. Ripples climbed the bank to touch the monk's sandals. "Grow teeth." At the monastery, the bells tolled noon with a sound slightly wrong, like a word mispronounced by a native speaker. Novices watched the path where Ryosen should have returned at dawn. Abbot Jiko felt the tone shiver his bones. He went to the scripture hall and opened the oldest scrolls. Ink the color of dried plum, rice paper cracked like winter lake ice. In the margins, where generations had jotted glosses, a hand much older had written a single character. Dong. East. The ink had bled as if it were still wet. He closed the scroll with gentleness usually reserved for the dead. In the village beneath the monastery, omens crowded the day. A fisherman drew up a net of dead lanterns, paper, inked with prayers, dry and crackling, their candle cups full of river water. The headwoman found her shadow detached at noon. It sat under the persimmon tree and would not come when she called. A dog bowed to an empty crossroads and whined as if the road had asked forgiveness. Word mounted the paths like a horse no one had saddled. Something had stirred in the cedars. By the stream, Ryosen and Koryu rested where moss tried to green the stones. "If memory is the price," Ryosen said, "take mine. I have too many winters and not enough summers." He touched his chest, where the prayer beads lay warm from his skin. "I can spare a name or two." Koryu studied him. Sun sifted through the needles, laying a lattice of light across the monk's face. "You think you have nothing left to lose because the world already took your sight," the god said. "But blindness is not emptiness. It is a different way of holding the lantern." He stepped closer. "The debt will choose. It may not be merciful." Branches clicked, no wind, like chopsticks tapping porcelain. Ryosen lifted his head. "We are not alone." They stepped from the trees. 3 figures in lacquered coats the color of extinguished charcoal, each bearing a staff capped with a jade knot. Their hair was bound high with cords of white silk, faces unreadable as uncarved stone. Koryu's jaw tightened. "Shrine wardens," he said softly. "They survived their own forgetting." The leader bowed, not low enough to honor a god, not high enough to insult one. "Blind monk," he said. His voice was clean as a blade rinsed in snow. "You have done a kindness beyond your measure. Return it. Bind what you have loosed." He lifted his staff. The jade knot sighed like a trapped breeze. "We keep the East from drowning in itself." Ryosen tapped his cane once. "If the East must drown, let it drown in remembrance." The warden's eyes flicked toward Koryu, then back. "Remembrance breeds hunger. Gods eat attention. Men starve. The seal is a bowl. We do not break bowls in winter." Koryu laughed without mirth. The stream rose as if to listen. "You speak like a man who fears his own lips." He took one step, and the moss smoked under his heel. "I am not what your fathers caged." "No," the warden said. "You are what their fear became." He set the staff's tip to stone. A circle of frost sprang outward, whitening moss, whitening Ryosen's sandals. The monk did not move. The frost crept to Koryu's toes and stopped, hissing like a snake that had lost its fangs. "Det chooses," the warden said. "Let it be the monk. He already lives on the edge of absence." He lifted his staff higher. The jade knot split, not with a crack but with a sigh of relief, and threads of cold unspooled into the air, weaving a pale lattice around Ryosen. Koryu's eyes burned brighter. "Touch him, and the river remembers its teeth." He raised his hand. The stream thickened, curved upward, a bright blade of water aligning with his palm. Ryosen spoke before the first drop fell. "Hold." The word rang like a bell struck inside a skull. "If a price is owed, I pay it." He turned his blind gaze toward the warden. "But I pay it to the mountain, not to men who mistake bowls for temples." The lattice tightened. The world dimmed, not to Ryosen but to everything else. As if the monk were a lantern and the air had decided to be night. He felt something small and bright move within him, like a fish in a jar. It pressed against his ribs, seeking a crack. "Name it," Koryu said, voice lower now, dangerous, "and I will break it." "Do that," the warden replied, "and he loses more than sight." The fish paused. It turned, brushed his heart, and swam toward his throat. Ryosen understood. Memory had found its exit. He thought of the first day he entered the monastery, a boy brought by winter, hands cracked, eyes already a little clouded. Of the abbot's voice saying, "You can learn to listen to what doesn't want to be heard." Of snow, of bells, of the way cedar holds the smell of rain. He bowed his head. "Take what you came for," he whispered, "but leave me the sound of water." The fish leapt. The forest exhaled, and the bell that had been wandering the mountain found its tower. Far away at the monastery, Abbot Jiko stumbled as a word unraveled in his mind, the word that named his oldest student. On the stream bank, Koryu roared, and the river stood like a blade between God and men. The warden lowered his staff. "It is done," he said. "For now." The god looked at the monk with a pain almost human. "Who are you?" Koryu asked softly, "when your name has been eaten?" Ryosen listened to the water answer for him, and for a moment the sound was enough. Chapter 4. The River That Remembered Names. The frost retreated like a dying animal. The wardens had vanished into mist, leaving the scent of burnt snow and iron vows behind them. Ryosen knelt beside the river that had almost become a blade. His breath came shallow, his chest hollowed by something missing, something he could not name, because the name itself was gone. Koryu watched him in silence. The god's skin dimmed, the gold fading to bronze. He reached down and touched the monk's shoulder. "You are emptied," he said, "but not dead." Ryosen lifted his head. His face was calm, but the calm was the kind that follows ruin, not peace. "I hear water," he murmured. "It calls many things. None of them are mine." The god looked toward the horizon. The east unravels. The warden's seal cracks in places they do not guard. My brothers stir in their sleep, angry at the noise of men. He turned back, eyes like stormlight trapped in amber. And you are the echo they will follow. Your absence is a sound too loud to ignore. Ryosen rose slowly, leaning on his cane. If they follow me, they will find silence. No, Koryu said. They will find a door. The river stirred. A figure rose from it, a woman woven of mist and water, her hair drifting like ink in rain. Her eyes were hollow yet full of reflection. She bowed to the god, then turned to the monk. He carries the mark, she whispered. The debt was paid in his name, and his name is now the river's. We will remember it. Ryosen tilted his face toward her voice. Then I am not lost. The spirit smiled, sad and fleeting. Names that live in rivers are never still. You will flow, blind monk. You will go where memory gathers. She reached out, touching his forehead with fingers made of moonlight. The east watches. Koryu stepped closer. What do you want of him? The river spirit's gaze flicked upward, toward the peaks veiled in cloud. Balance. What was unbound will not rest. The mountain has woken. Its dreams spill into the valleys. The forgotten gods walk again, half-formed, half-starved. She looked back to Ryosen. One will come for you before the next dawn, not to harm, but to ask. Ryosen nodded, serene. Then I will listen. She smiled once more, then dissolved. A sigh made visible. The river resumed its song, though now it hummed with words that no language had owned. For a time neither monk nor god spoke. The wind carried ash from some unseen fire far below. Finally, Koryu said, If they come for you, I will not hide. The east owes me breath, and I will take it back. Ryosen turned his sightless eyes toward him. You cannot fight what asks to be remembered. Then I will teach it fear, said the god. The monk chuckled, soft as a falling petal. Fear and faith are twins. Both kneel when the bell rings. Koryu frowned. You speak as if you wish to die. I have already done that once, Ryosen said. When the name left, so did I. What remains only walks, because the river is kind. They began walking again, eastward, though neither could say why. The path wound through cedars that bent under invisible weight, their bark cracked with veins of silver. Insects hid. Even the wind seemed cautious. At dusk, they reached a village at the foot of the mountain. Doors were sealed with salt lines. No smoke rose from the chimneys. In the square stood a statue of a man kneeling before a dragon, moss swallowing its face. Ryosen stopped. This place remembers you, he said. Koryu stared at the statue. No, it remembers its fear of me. The god's shadow stretched long across the stones. Tonight, he said, that fear will return. As darkness thickened, the river began to hum louder, its song spreading through the air like the pulse of some buried heart. Far away, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from within the mountain. Ryosen lifted his head toward the sound. The east wakes hungry, he whispered. Koryu's eyes burned faintly gold again. Then let it eat. Chapter 5. The mountain that ate the dawn. The night did not fall. It bled. A slow, viscous dark oozed from the tree line, swallowing starlight and reflection alike. The village seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for its own heartbeat to return. Ryosen felt the air shiver around him. The mountain's pulse had begun. He stood beside Koryu in the square, before the moss-wrapped statue. The stone trembled underfoot. It begins again, the god said. His voice was no longer weary. It carried thunder the way an ocean carries ships, as inevitability. From the cracks in the earth, a glow emerged, red as birth and wound. The statue split at its spine. Beneath it writhed something serpentine, made of scales and smoke. A dragon's skull breached the world, eye sockets burning with centuries of restraint. Ryosen gripped his cane. "You are not the only one they chained." Koryu stepped forward. The ground blackened where his feet touched. "That one was my brother," he said, voice low. "When they buried me, they buried him deeper, to silence our echo. The East cannot stand 2 dawns." The dragon hissed, no sound but a tremor that shook snow from distant peaks. From the fissure, bodies of mist crawled, half-formed gods, silhouettes of forgotten prayers. The sky curdled with their longing. Koryu spread his arms. "You hear them, monk. The unmade, the unfed. Their hunger is the hymn of this age." Ryosen's hands trembled around the beads he still carried. "Hunger is not holiness," he said softly, "and gods who forget mercy are only mouths with crowns." The words struck like stones dropped into a well. The dragon turned its skull toward him. From within its hollow mouth a light swelled, not warmth, but remembrance. Ryosen felt it pierce him, threading through his empty name, finding the gap where memory used to sleep. He gasped. Inside his ribs, something stirred, that same small brightness the warden's frost had once awakened. But now it burned gold, not white. The river's name, the debt. It had not gone. It had grown. Koryu saw it too. His eyes widened, then narrowed with awe. "You carry the river," he said. "You became the name." Ryosen straightened, his blindness no longer fragile but absolute. A veil, not a wound. "Then let the river speak." The wind howled through him, as if his chest were a gate. From the village well, from the mountain's cracks, from every droplet left by vanished rain, water rose. It did not pour. It remembered. Faces formed in the current, eyes like coins, hands of glass. The forgotten gods cried out as the tide reached them, not in fear, but in recognition. Koryu raised his hand, but the monk's voice stopped him. "This is not destruction," Ryosen said. "This is return." The water coiled around the dragon's skull. The beast shuddered once, twice, then dissolved into vapor, scales to steam, bones to morning mist. Its roar faded into rain. The lesser gods followed, their outlines softening into cloud and river and sky. Only Koryu remained, standing ankle-deep in the rising flood. His glow dimmed until only his eyes burned, twin suns about to set. "You have ended what I was," he said. "No," Ryosen whispered. "I have reminded you what you are." The god closed his eyes. His body broke into light, scattering across the storm like petals caught in wind. Each spark flew eastward, vanishing into the pale horizon. When silence returned, the monk stood alone in the square. The water had already begun to sink into the earth, leaving behind wet stone and an echo of breath. From the tree line, dawn arrived hesitantly, not gold but silver, as if the world had been polished too thin for color. Ryosen smiled toward the warmth he could not see. He turned to the mountain and bowed. "The east has eaten its dawn," he said quietly. "May it learn to digest light." And somewhere beyond hearing, a bell rang. It was not from the monastery, nor from any hand of man. It was the sound of memory, the sound of the river whispering a name that no longer needed to be known. Closing. The river keeps the name. They say the river still hums when the wind moves east, a tune no fisherman can repeat. Some claim it sounds like prayer, others like the sigh of a god who learned humility. The villagers no longer carve idols. Instead, they leave bowls of water at their doors, so dawn can see its own reflection before it rises. As for the monk, no grave was ever found. Some nights, when fog curls low through the cedars, travelers glimpse a blind man walking barefoot along the current, touching the surface as if reading scripture in ripples. The water listens. The mountains bow. The sound of his cane is a heartbeat the world forgot it had. If you have heard the river in your sleep, perhaps it remembers you too. Do not fear the whisper in its song. It only calls what's already inside. And when the bell rings where there is no temple, look to the east. The lost gods are never truly gone.